Hello, everybody, to all Poultry School audience, to another video in stories we have today. We're very excited to have today Casey Bradley. Casey has a long experience in the poultry industry. She's going to be telling us about more about herself. I just met her 1 month ago, and we're very excited to having you, Casey, just for the record, the people that doesn't know you, besides her education and all the strong in the Arkansas University, she is now with the company Animistics that she provides a consultancy and education tools, and also she has a background in the farm, so she has the boots on. So Casey, thank you for your time. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and thank you to have you. And I wore my pig shirt because I knew we were going to talk about poultry.
No, 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 no. We do everything.
No,
We like
I
bacon.
know, I know.
We like bacon, but yeah, now it's about the poultry school. But at the end of the day, the concepts they're shareable, the concepts. But Casey, why don't we start a little bit with the audience that doesn't know you? Where are you coming from, and your passion in the academics, and then the fantastic platform that you are sharing knowledge.
Yeah, so you mentioned I grew up in production, and I would say my first exposure to livestock production was as a child. The laughing joke is that my mom was tired of being pregnant with me, and so she had to go work with my dad at the time on a three-wheeler, and she bounced me out in the pig fields. So she went to do chores
Okay.
with my dad. So that's how early I got started in production. And honestly, I worked with my dad a lot, and I had that opportunity that most children don't have today in agriculture of being able to work alongside their parents. So a lot of my farming practices, we started out in pasture-based systems. We went to confinement and vertically, integrated in the 90s. So early in my career, I got to see the expansion of, at this time, the swine industry, but we'll get to the poultry part of my career as well. But, I went to Michigan State for a bachelor's degree, didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I decided to go work for New Fashion Pork. And that's where I got my production management experience on boots on the ground and learning how to manage sows at the time in three different states and realizing that, and we'll cut that and I'll start over. Just grabbing popping real quick. Sorry. If that's all
It's
right,
okay.
pop it. Yeah. Uh, but got my boots on the ground with New Fashion Pork, and I had a lot of problems that I didn't have all the solutions for or the knowledge to solve. So I decided I wanted to go back to graduate school. I got lucky and I had a full-time job with Dr. Charles Maxwell as his research farm manager for 8 years at the University of Arkansas. So I was an untraditional graduate student. The fact that I didn't continue all the way through for my education, but then also I worked full time for the university. But that opened my door to see a lot of different things involved with a lot of different companies. And really, at the University of Arkansas, that's where my poultry experience started. We obviously, in graduate school, we shared courses with the poultry science department. So Dr. Charles Maxwell was probably my main professor, but then Dr. Craig Kuhn was also one that was on my committee and one of my mentors throughout my career of working with him and still staying in contact with him. After I finished my PhD, we decided, my husband and I were from the North, and we decided to try to find a job back up in the North. So I went to work for Calmback Feeds, and that's where my swine and poultry really crossed to where at the time they didn't have a poultry nutritionist working full time. So I started our layer research facility and our broiler research facility doing battery cage work. But at the time, I developed omega fatty acid products for Eggland's Best. So we fed a lot of the hens that for eggs for the Eggland's Best. So the high omega, high nutrient dense eggs. And so I got a lot of exposure to layers. Calmback at the time had about 30,000 sows, farrow to finish, and
Wow.
then they had about 2 million layers. I think that's probably grown significantly since I've left. And so I got the experience of not only consulting as a nutritionist, as a researcher, Um, I also got to help troubleshoot and work on nutrition solutions for our swine herds and our layer herds, and got exposed to turkeys and game birds through that experience as a multi-species nutritionist. And I really valued that experience because I wouldn't be where I am, I guess, in my today without being able to work across species and understand that. So that was kind of my experience to working in feed industry and learning things all feed. And then I went to work as with AB Vista, and I still didn't do as much poultry there. It was swine, but everybody talked about birds in that company. And I did some work up in Canada. And then I also had a ruminant role. So I had about 10-15% technical support for the ruminant industry on the enzyme sales there. So even branching out further in not just swine and poultry. And then we fast forward, I worked for DSM in their innovation department and
Okay.
really got to launch the Verax program. So, and I still help them manage the Verax program, and that's a blood biomarker program that hopefully predicts performance issues. We can troubleshoot nutrition, health management, different things like that through looking at the blood biomarkers of the birds and helping them in getting that also out in swine. Hopefully here in the next year or so that comes out as well. But behind the scenes on a lot of development work, both in swine and poultry, helping
Yeah,
them.
I think
Yeah,
yeah, I think that in Casey, you have a very, very broad experience, and I'm very excited about that you tell us how you have narrowed that to the service and that you are providing right now. Because I think that all the experience that you are sharing between swine and poultry, at the end of the day, I think the main reason is providing value and having passion to serve. And at the end of the day, they are the same tools, but in different species, right? So all these boots on the ground, academics and different companies, and then where we are going to be discussing is what is Animistic about? What is your platform about?
yeah. So Animistic started out as I didn't want to go back to a full-time job, and I thought I wanted to consult a little bit. And I had some jobs lined up. I was probably going to do some consulting in China and Asia. And then COVID hit. So that kind of changed everything. And I said, what do I do? I love teaching, I love passion. So I started some mentoring programs and some podcasts. So I got into more of the outreach education that really fit me. I still had project work on the side that paid the bills. And since then, we service um, primarily our goal is product and market development in the swine and poultry. So we've worked on things from new enzymes to new probiotics to poultry litter treatments, pit manure treatments, things like that for swine. We've done different research trials through our partnerships that we have both in swine and poultry with production facilities that will go out and do different levels of research. And it's really he said, what is our purpose? And it's really our purpose, and I live by it, is to faithfully serve through science plus heart and being kind of that outreach and that thought leader while hopefully changing the industries for the better. And through this process, I also got to really work in production with a rabbit farm and really take my experiences from the swine and poultry industry and how do we raise rabbits in a similar fashion.
Oh,
And, working across three species in production operations, there's a lot of crossover from barn management, herd or flock management, disease control, biosecurity. There is a lot that goes into it that we aren't very different. One may, oink and one may squawk and, one may bite you, as I found out with rabbits. But it really all crosses over and have those skills that interchange. And then, so we work with even producers, but we tend to work more with the niche producers. So we primarily work with pasture-based systems, regenerative ag systems with poultry and pigs and cattle. and help them support also on nutrition along with product and market development for several companies coming into the US market.
So when I went into your page and also discussing with you, you told me that you have very distinctive programs, pork lingo, how you call it,
Swine
and poultry
lingo and poultry
swine lingo
lingo.
and poultry lingo. Explain about that. I'm really eager to. I really want you to explain about that.
Well, throughout my career, I had tons of colleagues, either they were in customer service, marketing, regulatory, that, after meetings would ask me questions because they felt like they couldn't ask that question during the meeting and they were having a hard time keeping up with the conversation, or really you could tell on their faces that they just didn't get it, right? Because they got lost in the language that we speak. And we take for granted when we say ADG, for instance, and that's average daily gain.
Okay.
Well, if that's not something you've worked with or measure every day, you're not sure what ADG is. Just like I'm not sure I still quite comprehend what EBITDA is when it comes to business. So, I saw there was a need. I was always that person, that team member that would step in and help and coach and educate. And so I created the training program to send it to the masses. And we have done, for the last 3 or 4 sessions, I've done swine lingo, and this is our first with poultry lingo. We've done also live sessions. So I wanted that interactive learning to integrate that in, but we're also going to be working on it to make it to where if we can't do live sessions with everybody, that the content and the curriculum will be available. So it's really we have a lot of people coming into ag, and one of the challenges of bringing people in and wanting to stay here is we treat them like outsiders, and these courses are those tools to say, hey, you're not an outsider. Here's a quick rundown. Now, obviously, their vocabulary and their expertise and their experience can't all be from a course, but at least it helps the team, come together in companies to be able to speak the same language. And I hear that a lot from technical people as well. A lot of people don't, they have to do a lot of training with their general employees to understand little things about their business. Either it's from accounting or ordering, things like that. And I just remember as a technical manager visiting plants and stuff, people wanted to know what we did. What did the enzymes do? So even people who manufactured our enzymes, the staff was so curious to learn about what they were making and why it was important to what we did, to the food supply, to the world. And when you sit down and tell them, using Vitase, I'm not only using less feed, less land, less water, but I'm also saving the Gulf of Mexico, for instance, in the US from eutrophication and reducing, and global climate change and things. They get really excited about their job. And it's not just a repetitive task every day. They get the why behind it, and then they get behind the mission. And that is really kind of the core reason I, developed swine lingo and poultry lingo, but hopefully it's, like I said, there for everybody to take advantage of as well.
That's very nice. So, uh, Casey, what do you think are the main challenges in the industry, pork and poultry in the education? Like we discussed at the first talk that we have all the shows that we go, but I believe those are more commercial. The big speakers go, the big doctors go, but it's just 45 minutes in a presentation. I don't know how much the impact on real education that can make. Maybe it's just transfer education or showing concepts, but that you have been actively in this, let's say, a task of providing education, which are the main challenge for the people like us that we want to educate? Is presential, is online, is a hybrid? Because how do you think we can do better in this area?
Well, I would say I'm not young anymore, so we have a totally different generation that we need to start training. They have learned differently, they interact differently, they use technology differently than we have in the past. And we have less attention span with them to get our point across. So sitting down and reading a book, and if you see behind me, you can see my library full of
Yeah.
textbooks that I keep as reference materials. But that's not the learner of today. And then we take that even into our production systems further. A lot of our workers, English is not their first language in the US. And I could say that also in Europe, that they also have a lot of immigrant labor in the Netherlands from Poland or, Russia or Ukraine, that, the language barrier is a problem of education. But also when we're doing tasks, it's really hard to get the workers out of the barns, out of the feed mills, maybe even out of the offices to even go to an educational event, right? Or take 2 days to travel and attend a seminar or go to a trade show. So it's really even hard when you have so much work to do and I finally understood, I didn't need to go to every meeting. And my boss, I remember one of my first bosses saying, you don't need to go to every meeting. And I finally understood why. It's hard to keep up with your current workload, but also, what's the value of learning? What are you bringing back? What's that return on investment of sending you there? And I understand that as a manager now, but I think it's the biggest challenge is how we educate. And I use the example. This was 2010, so quite a long time ago, but it really irritated me to where I taught labs at the University of Arkansas, and I always use the Intro to Animal Science labs as a way to recruit students because I had fun, interactive, let's get dirty, let's mess with the pigs in a fun way, a fun, safe way, right? For people who never had that exposure. And I could always recruit 2 or 3 people to come work for me. And and then I had to resort to the risk. They didn't want to send 100 students out for class, so I had to video the farm. This is not the same experience. So obviously we have technology you talked about and being virtual, but I even hear from a lot of graduate students coming out, and I could probably say the same thing for bachelor students, is that they're not getting that hands-on training anymore that they used to. And that's, I mean,
Yeah.
we become animal scientists. We tend to work in production. Why? Well, we made it a job, but we love animals, right? And I joke to say that, God had me love animals and he used animals to teach me how to love people. And it wasn't the other way around.
Wow, that's a nice saying. That's a nice
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, I love people that love animals. Maybe not all people, but people who love animals.
Okay.
But I learned to interact better. Animals taught me a lot and gave me a lot of confidence. And so I think, as we balance this and seeing problems, if I'm going to be a field tech and I have no experience seeing these challenges, it's very difficult. So I think, time, resources, attention span, and learning styles all plays a role in how do we get that hands-on experience? How do we get the information they need to know? And how do we fuel the fire of your why is now my why? And I have a passion to serve the industry, and I'm not just somebody collecting a paycheck. And that's really what I think the future of our industry needs is we need to spur innovation, we need to spur passion in our young workers that, they're going to be our leaders someday. And, we may be losing out on some of the really good ones because we're not effectively training them now. But I would say also the other problem is expectations, right? It's the fast
Yeah.
food mentality that we want it all now. We want to have the title and the paycheck and all of this. And we also don't set reasonable expectations for our employees and young people coming out in their careers. So there's a lot of challenges, but there's, opportunities, right? That's why we're here today
Yeah.
talking. It's opportunities that we have and that we can come together and solve to help the next generation. And our ultimate goal is to feed the world, and that's what still gets me up every day. I might sit behind the desk, I might formulate some diets, I may run a research trial, but my goal is to feed the world. And I feel, you know, just as strongly that my position in that big, global influence and puzzle is just as important today as it was 20 some years ago when I started.
What do you think? Because we're well a little bit of in the poultry school, the main subjects that you think we need to focus in the future. We know that AI has been booming in this last year, but what subjects do you think the industry need uh, training materials from, like say the ABC, the basics?
Well, I mean, this is a great example of just talking to my staff and teaching my son math and multiplication and percentages when we were talking about it. And, um, I said I can do percentages very easily in my head because I had to sit out there on the breed row and calculate if my conception, if I had 85% um, pregnancy rate, how many sows do I have, and do I have enough crates, and how many sows do I need to wean to get them into the farrowing house, right? So I had to constantly do fractions, multiplication, percentages in my head. And today you don't have to. They have a calculator. So I even think some of the advantage is we even have a dashboard to tell them. We can even, have flow charts and automations to say, okay, you need to wean 36 sows today. Next week or tomorrow, you need to wean 37. So, there's tools there, but we also need to teach people how to build models because they're not perfect. And being involved on some back projects of AI in agriculture and training models, language models, large language models. There's a lot we need to do to perfect it. It's kind of awesome on how efficient it can make me, but it's so scary how they get things wrong because you can't just go to Chat GPT and ask a question. They cite things wrong, they get things wrong still. And so you still have to have that knowledge. But I think we're also seeing with AI, our critical thinking is going away because they're not having to problem solve on their own. I still think you have to have the core fundamentals, but a lot of classroom work, a lot of computer work still, if you're going to go work in production, cannot replace the hands-on experience with the animals.
Yeah,
And
I think. Mhm.
because that is the hardest thing to teach somebody. And, as being a manager, I could tell a student if not was going to work out. The animals would tell me if they're going to work out or not. And sometimes there's skills that you can't even teach that you either have it or you don't. But I think giving the students the opportunity, the younger people, young employees in their career, to experience different roles, see how different parts of the operations work, understand that I'm not just going to work in a farrowing house, but then take it all the way to the slaughter plant to see my work through and learn, where am I good at? Where do I fit? What do I like to do? What do I not like to do? And I think we all think education, just develop another course, can replace experiences and expertise, and I don't think they can. I think there's some things we can do to share our stories, get them excited, but until they're really into it and have the opportunity to experience it firsthand, um, I think it's a challenge. And I think so focused we get them to keep pushing in school, school, school. And I really think, we need to go quite younger to get them those experiences to see what they like to do. And
Yeah,
if you, fit people with their strengths and what they like to do, then that's where the magic happens.
yeah, I think that you have also a good international, let's say, exposition. You have
Hmm.
been doing academic and the professional. How you fit culture in this? Because you can create a program, let's say, for the thinking in the USA audience or how the culture go there, but how to, let's say, pack it and let's say share it to Mexico or Latin America. Do you focus on that also? and how you manage that. Because in my experience, you can have a tool, a solution, but different cultures, let's say their perception is different.
100%. And I am blessed to have the opportunity to have works and gotten to know people from all over the world very early on in my career. From graduate students that I helped on the farm as an undergraduate, to even having immigrant farm help when I was younger. And, we had a Vietnamese. I had friends that were Vietnamese young in my life, that, immigrated to the US after the Vietnam War, that were refugees and things like that. So I was exposed to a lot of different cultures from a very young age. And then in my career, really having that opportunity changed a lot of things. I go internationally, and the first thing they say, you're American. What you do in America is not going to work here. And I could take my Bangladesh trip, for example, that if I created education material, the way their market is defragmented and not necessarily integrated, I can't get to the people who need that knowledge
That's
very easily. You have to have partnerships for one thing to have that, and then you have to tweak it for, language, culture. Me going to teach in a highly Muslim country as a female, um, is not going to be as effective as sending a man. And we want to talk about equality, and why can't Casey go do that? And, I want everybody to be able to learn, but I think, you got to meet people where they're at, and not push things. Not that I've always been respected and treated very well wherever I go, but those are even things to look at, to say that people, some younger Casey would have been offended by, to say, why aren't you sending me to this country or that country? And, it's more of a gender thing due to culture. And I was so irritated as that young female, professional, and now as an old female professional and somebody who sees the bigger picture and wants to help the world. I understand that. And, I want to do things in Africa, and I've worked with a lot of different students, and, my peers over there say the best way you could probably develop something is you come to our countries and see how it is first, and then develop it, help us tweak it and develop it for that country. And yeah, and so it's really hard to, even when I went to Bangladesh, to be like, hey, have you guys ever heard of the Amish? Um, we don't
yeah.
have electric. We we use horse and buggies for
Wow.
years, and, we have all natural ventilated buildings, and and I'm like, and you talk about being like, we don't. It's not the same. I can work in a highly integrated system and go back from even my childhood to tell you why we did things the way we did it, and what works and what doesn't, is because of that experience across culture and across time that I have. That's hard to replace, without giving younger people opportunity to gain those experiences as well. So I think, going to learn where they are at, and then changing and help adapting something to where that country's at and that culture's at, is really critical to help the knowledge. And you can't take personal offense for it if you're not the right person to do it.
Yeah, that's a good experience. I always believe, that also I have been blessed with be uh, a few places around the world, and that opens your eyes and then change your perspective. First of all, when you think that the only true is yours, that the only thing that the only way to do the things you think is the way that you do it, when you go and you're exposed to another cultures and another people, say, wow, this is, you open your mind, open your mind. So Casey, we have a few more minutes. Tell us, or tell me, what's the next project? What's your next project in the pipeline for you?
Well, actually, the next stuff we're working on, I think we'll eventually work on poultry and swine products as well, but we're developing some education and training more in the pet space because there's a need even in pet owners and I would say humans on nutrition training and how do we there's a nutrition is vastly changing in human nutrition and that's reflected in pet nutrition and I hate to say it eventually that's what trickles into even production agriculture and understanding the consumer. And I think, I've spent a lot of time the last couple of years understanding the consumer, understanding the trends that are coming forward in nutrition, and hopefully being able to educate both professionals that work with all animals on nutrition, but also owners. There's a lot this, gravitating to homesteading here in the US, who I have a few goats and a few cows and some chickens and pigs of helping them. A lot of that lost experience is gone, where our educators or people's experiences in very integrated systems and bringing that education and knowledge back of you can do that, but have you thought about this? This is what happens when you do this, right? um, Things like that. So that's kind of where we're going, is to bring nutritional education to more people and then hopefully long term develop our own products that from a nutritional solution standpoint that are missing in the industry. So education, training, and then product solutions.
And one last question: what's the legacy that you want to provide to the world?
I think I already have. Um, I have several mentees that I'm very proud of that are living their dreams, that have become successful, and that's my legacy. Is I don't want my name on a billboard or on a school building, or I want to see I call it the ripples that turn into tidal waves, and I've been sending my ripples out, and I do have some pretty good waves started, and I'd like to continue to see that of how many people that I can help live their
Wow,
dream.
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So, Casey, so thank you very much for your time. The main goal of this was having a little conversation to put you in the spot with our poultry school. Where are you coming from? The solutions that you are taking, a little bit of this conversation about the international mentality. I really like it. And the main goal is that people can reach you. Actually, when we share this video, we will put all the platforms or your connections so people can reach you and maybe create another nice connection so we can collaborate together to provide these tools to the industry, pork and poultry, and try to do a different movement on what we have today, Casey. So thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you. Have a great day. Blessed to be here.